It has killed half of all humans who have ever lived. In 1967, it was killing more soldiers in Vietnam than bullets. The world's most powerful armies were powerless against a microscopic parasite. Their drugs had failed. The resistance was spreading. They needed a weapon that did not exist in modern science. So the Chinese government did not look forward. They looked backward into a forbidden archive from the year 340 AD. What they found was a chemical bomb hidden inside a common garden plant. A plant that hunts cancer cells, obliterates parasites, and cures fever in hours. And a plant that the pharmaceutical industry is terrified you will learn to grow. They say it is dangerous to use the whole plant. They say you must buy the extracted pill. But for 1600 years, nobody told the emperors of China that. This is the story of the weed that won a Nobel Prize, and why the World Health Organization does not want it in your garden. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. The archive opens in 340 AD in the Eastern Jin dynasty in China. A scholar named Ge Hong is compiling an emergency medical handbook. He calls it Zhouhou Beiji Fang, emergency prescriptions kept up one's sleeve. Inside he documents hundreds of remedies, but one stands out. For intermittent fevers, what we now call malaria, he prescribes a specific plant. His instructions are oddly precise. Take a handful of King Hao, soak it in about half a gallon of water, wring out the juice, and drink it all. But here is what makes the prescription remarkable. He never says to boil it. For 16 centuries, that detail seemed insignificant. Then in 1971, it saved the world. By 1596, Li Shizhen, the most celebrated physician of the Ming dynasty, includes Qing Hao in his compendium of Materia Medica. He recommends tea made from it specifically for malaria. The plant becomes foundational in traditional Chinese medicine, used not just for fever, but for expelling intestinal parasites. They call it Wormwood. The name tells you what it does. Fast forward to 1967. The Vietnam War is destroying armies on both sides, not just with combat, but with disease. Malaria is killing thousands. In China alone, 30 million cases every year and 300,000 deaths. The standard drugs are failing. Chloroquine fails. Quinine fails. The parasites have learned to resist. On May 23, 1967, the Chinese government holds an emergency meeting in Beijing. They launch a secret military operation called Project 523, named for that date. Their mission is to find a cure before malaria decimates the military. They screen over 240,000 compounds. Nothing works. In January 1969, they bring in Tu Youyu. She is a pharmaceutical chemist at the China Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Her assignment is nearly impossible. She must review ancient medical texts and find something modern science missed. She and her team screen over 2,000 traditional recipes. They test 380 herbal extracts from about 200 different plants. Most fail. One plant keeps appearing in the old texts. Artemisia annua, sweet wormwood. Initial experiments are frustrating. They boil the wormwood according to conventional scientific methods. The results are inconsistent. It works one day, fails the next. Tu is perplexed. The ancient texts clearly say this plant works. What are they missing? Then she remembers Ge Hong's instructions from 340 AD. He never mentioned heat. She realizes that boiling water might be destroying the active compound. October 4, 1971. Using a low-temperature ether extraction instead of boiling water, Tu successfully isolates a compound that shows 100% effectiveness against malaria in mice and monkeys. But nobody knows if it is safe for humans. In an act of remarkable courage, two colleagues volunteer to be the first test subjects. She later said that as head of this research group, she had the responsibility. They survived. Clinical trials followed. All 21 malaria patients in the first study recovered completely. They named the compound Qinghousu. The world now knows it as artemisinin. October 5th, 2015. Stockholm, Sweden. Tu Youyou, now 84 years old, receives the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. She is the first mainland Chinese scientist to win a Nobel Prize in a scientific category. She did it without a doctorate, without a medical degree, without training abroad. Just ancient texts and persistence. Her acceptance speech is titled Discovery of Artemisinin, a gift from traditional Chinese medicine to the world. So why does this plant work so well? The secret lies in a molecular weapon hidden inside the leaves. An endoperoxide bridge, a rare chemical structure that reacts with iron. Here is the mechanism. Malaria parasites survive by feasting on hemoglobin in your red blood cells. Because of this, they are loaded with iron. When artemisinin enters the parasite, it reacts with that high iron concentration. The endoperoxide bridge breaks apart and generates free radicals, essentially detonating a microscopic bomb inside the parasite. It kills them within hours, faster than any other anti-malarial drug in history. According to World Health Organization estimates, artemisinin-based drugs have reduced global malaria mortality by over 20%. In Africa alone, more than 100,000 lives are saved every year. The Lasker Foundation calls it arguably the most important pharmaceutical intervention in the last half-century. Their official reasoning: concerns about standardization, dosage variability, quality control, and the potential for developing drug resistance. It sounds reasonable. Until you follow the money. The global artemisinin pharmaceutical market was worth $75 to $96 million in 2024. Projections put it at $225 to $677 million by 2030. The artemisinin-based combination therapy market is even larger, $362 million in 2024, projected to reach $529 million by 2030. Major pharmaceutical giants like Sanofi have invested heavily in producing semi-synthetic artemisinin using genetically engineered yeast. This centralizes production. It eliminates the small pharma. It ensures artemisinin remains under corporate control. Compare that to the alternative. A packet of Artemisia annua seeds costs about $5 online. The plant thrives in poor soil. It requires minimal water. It produces multiple harvests per year. One backyard garden could supply anti-malarial tea for months. If people in malaria-endemic regions simply grew Artemisia in their gardens and made tea, they would not need to buy expensive pills from Novartis or Sanofi. The entire supply chain, from genetically modified yeast production to pharmaceutical manufacturing to distribution networks, would become unnecessary. The WHO's position protects that infrastructure. It protects those profit margins. But malaria is just the beginning of Wormwood's story. And this is where the suppression becomes even more obvious. Since the early 1990s, researchers have discovered that the same mechanism that kills malaria parasites also targets cancer cells. Remember the iron? Malaria parasites hoard iron, but cancer cells are even worse. Cancer cells are metabolic hogs. They require 5 to 15 times more iron than normal cells to sustain their rapid growth and division. They are essentially primed to explode. Studies confirm that Artemisia absinthium and Artemisia annua both possess potent anthelmintic properties. bitter wormwood, Artemisia absinthium, and Artemisia annua kill tapeworms, roundworms, and pinworms. A 2017 study found Artemisia absinthium extract caused paralysis, death, and ultrastructural damage to Hymenelepis nana, a common human tapeworm. Research on livestock showed that dietary wormwood supplementation reduced parasitic worm burdens in sheep. Infected with blood-sucking stomach worms, the active compounds include thujone in bitter wormwood and various sesquiterpene lactones in both species. These compounds interfere with the parasite's nervous systems, causing paralysis and eventual expulsion from the host body. In developing countries where anti-parasitic drugs like albendazole are expensive or unavailable, wormwood represents an accessible alternative. It grows readily, it requires no pharmaceutical infrastructure, and it has been used safely for millennia. Yet again, the World Health Organization and major health organizations remain silent on wormwood's anti-parasitic properties outside malaria. The emphasis stays entirely on pharmaceutical solutions. There is one more piece to this story, one that reveals how easily plant reputations get destroyed. The plant has a cousin, Artemisia absinthium, better known as the primary ingredient in absinthe. In the late 19th century, absinthe was the drink of Europe. Van Gogh drank it. Toulouse-Lautrec drank it. Oscar Wilde drank it. Ernest Hemingway drank it. They called it the Green Fairy. It was also blamed for madness, violence, and moral collapse. The catalyst came in 1905. A Swiss man named Jean Lanfray murdered his wife and 2 daughters in a drunken rage. The press focused on 2 glasses of absinthe he had consumed before the killings. They ignored that he had also drunk cognac, brandy, crème de menthe, wine, and beer. He was a chronic alcoholic who had been drinking since breakfast, but the damage was done. Prohibitionists seized the moment. They claimed wormwood caused psychosis, and they invented a condition called absinthism. By 1915, absinthe was banned across Europe and the United States. The official reason was thujone, a compound in wormwood, said to be a dangerous neurotoxin. The French wine industry, which had long viewed cheap absinthe as competition, actively lobbied for the ban. For a century, the prohibition held. Then, in the 1990s, scientists actually tested vintage bottles of pre-ban absinthe. They measured thujone content. The levels averaged 1.3 milligrams per liter, far below anything needed for psychoactive or toxic effects. The madness was a myth. The hallucinations were just extreme alcohol intoxication combined with adulterated cheap brands that added toxic substances like antimony and methanol. Modern research confirms thujone at absinthe concentrations poses no more risk than any high-proof spirit. The European Union lifted bans in 1998. The United States followed in 2007. The absinthe saga demonstrates how easily fear, misinformation, and economic interests destroy a plant's reputation. It was a trade war disguised as public health. The parallel to today is obvious. Control the narrative about safety, create regulatory barriers, then monopolize the extracted compounds. So here is where we stand. We have a plant used safely for 1,600 years, validated by a Nobel Prize in 2015. It is proven to kill parasites faster than any drug on the market, and it shows massive potential against cancer cells. And yet the authorities tell you it is dangerous to grow it in your garden. They tell you it is irresponsible to use the whole plant. They tell you that standardization is more important than access. But standardization is just another word for centralization, for corporate control, for profit protection. To be clear, malaria is a deadly killer. If you are sick, you need medicine that you know works. The problem isn't the science. Artemisinin is a miracle compound. The problem is who controls access to it. Is wormwood a miracle cure-all? No. Does it have limitations? Absolutely. Raw plant material does vary in artemisinin content based on growing conditions, and there are legitimate questions about optimal dosing. But the question you have to ask is, who benefits from you not knowing about it? Not people in malaria-endemic regions who lack pharmaceutical access. Not cancer patients seeking affordable complementary therapies. Not communities wanting healthcare self-sufficiency. The beneficiaries are pharmaceutical companies protecting their market share, regulatory agencies maintaining institutional control, and a medical industrial complex that profits from complexity and centralization rather than from accessible, affordable plant medicines. Organizations like Doctors Without Borders have successfully implemented Artemisia-based treatment programs in sub-Saharan Africa, training local farmers to grow and process the plant according to standardized protocols. These initiatives demonstrate that quality control and efficacy can be achieved without pharmaceutical industry involvement. The difference? When communities grow their own medicine, they are no longer customers. They are self-sufficient, and that threatens the entire profit model. One packet of seeds costs $5. One pharmaceutical prescription costs hundreds of dollars. One log of growing data, one generation of knowledge passed down, versus a lifetime of dependence on pills you cannot afford. In 2015, Tu Youyou said in her Nobel acceptance speech that artemisinin is a true gift from old Chinese medicine. But this is not the only instance in which the wisdom of Chinese medicine has borne fruit. She was acknowledging something modern medicine consistently downplays. Ancient plant wisdom, tested across millennia of human use, often contains profound therapeutic value. They can ban a bottle, they can discourage a tea, but they cannot patent a weed. Subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault. The next vault opens soon.